As I say, a very warm welcome to you all. I'm very happy to be back here at historic Juniper Hall once again for the announcement of the winner of the 2017 Doug Moran National Portrait Prize. And first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered today, the Eora people of the Gadigal Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Now, it's also part of my job each year to gently remind everybody that the family name is Moran, and so this prize is pronounced Moran. These are the Moran prizes, not the Moran prizes. As always, it is a great pleasure to be involved with such an important event in the annual arts calendar in Australia, and as I mentioned, it's a pleasure to welcome you all to Juniper Hall this morning on behalf of the Moran Arts Foundation. Now, this year's Doug Moran National Portrait Prize has been judged by Daniel Thomas, AM, Emeritus Director of the Art Gallery of South Australia, acclaimed artist Wendy Sharp, and Greta Moran, the Director of the Moran Arts Foundation. And we're going to be hearing very shortly, of course, from Wendy and Daniel. Just a little context for the prize, first of all. The Doug Moran National Portrait Prize is the richest art prize in Australia, with the winner receiving $150,000 and each finalist receiving $1,000. And this year, the Moran Arts Foundation received more than 1,130 entries for the Portrait Prize. Hugely exciting. But an absolutely massive task for the judges here to distill that number down to the 30 finalists that we see hanging here on the walls today. It's also great to see many of the artists who produced these works here this morning, and a very warm welcome in particular to them. Over the past year, the Moran Arts Foundation has presented several exhibitions here at Juniper Hall, including the 2016 Moran Prizes exhibition and the Head-On Photo Festival, as well as exhibitions from the Australian Watercolour Institute and also from Wendy Sharp. The exhibition of the finalist works that you see here today is going to be open to the public from tomorrow morning all the way through until the 17th of December. Now, Juniper Hall was also the venue for several talks by finalists of the 2016 Moran Art Prizes, and we're really looking forward to talks from many of today's finalists here in the coming weeks ahead. Other highlights that have occurred in 2017 included the Doug Moran National Portrait Prize exhibitions at Belconnen Arts Centre and Gosford Regional Gallery and Arts Centre, and the Moran Arts Foundation have plans, some great plans, to try to expand the touring program next year. And now we are moving towards that all-important announcement. It's my pleasure to introduce to you, first of all, Peter Moran, the CEO of the Moran Arts Foundation and the Managing Director of the Moran Healthcare Group. So would you please give Peter a very warm welcome. Peter Moran.
Thank you, Richard. I'd like to welcome you all to this morning to Juniper Hall on behalf of the Moran Arts Foundation and also the Moran family. A special welcome to Daniel Thomas, Wendy Sharp and Greta Moran. It's also pleasing to see so many of our finalists here this morning, and I thank you all for joining us, knowing that some have travelled quite some distance. We continue to see significant rises in the number of entries to the prizes each year, which is wonderful for both art in Australia and also the Moran Prize itself. Our family created the Doug Moran National Portrait Prize in 1988 as a gift to the nation for our bicentenary. In 2007, we introduced the Moran Contemporary Photographic Prize, and after nearly 10 years, we have decided to separate the two prizes, holding the Doug Moran National Portrait Prize now, and we will be calling for entries for the Moran Contemporary Photographic Prize early in the new year. So that gives each medium of the arts their own standing, we think, to allow each to grow in their own ways and not be competing a little with each other. The important work of the school photographic workshops continue to be held in all areas of Australia. This allows school children to take part in photographic workshops, and many who have not had privileges of iPhones, cameras, that sort of thing, take part in these photographic workshops, particularly in the outback areas of Australia. Now, before I hand back to Richard, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the artists who entered and in this year's Doug Moran National Portrait Prize, and in particular to our 30 finalists, of which many of you are here. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter. And now it's my pleasure to welcome two of our judges, Wendy Sharp and Daniel Thomas AM, to the stage in just a moment. Alongside Greta Moran, the founder of the Moran Arts Foundation, Daniel and Wendy have brought their formidable expertise and knowledge to the task of selecting the finalists and ultimately the winner of the 2017 prize. So let's hear a little about that process, and then the winner will be announced. So please join me now in welcoming Wendy and Daniel to the stage.
Thank you, Richard. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the process of judging, just very briefly, and to say that as an artist I was excited to see so many people so passionately involved in painting. Now, as Richard just said, there was 1,130 entries. This was, dare I say, more than the Archibald. And we looked at these entries online. From these entries, which came from all over Australia, people at all stages of their career, and an enormous range of different types of painting, we chose 200 semi-finalists. These works were actually sent here, so we looked at those in the flesh. From those 200, we managed to select 30, which was extremely difficult because there were so many paintings worthy of being included. So, just briefly, I could talk at length, but I won't, so don't worry. Just briefly, what sort of criteria would you use? And I think that as we stand here, you think so many different types of things. Well, you think, how can you choose all these different things? But I will say that first and foremost, although it's a portrait, it has to work as a painting. It has to address those issues of things like composition and so on. But then, it must be about something beyond the banality of mere likeness. It has to have an idea or a concept. You might not know who the sitter is. In fact, with this prize, unlike the Archibald, you don't have to know who the sitter is. Yes, there are some well-known people, but you don't have to. You don't necessarily know who they are, but you're interested in the person and you're interested in the world they inhabit. You want to keep returning to it, you're compelled by it. And also, like any painting that's worthwhile or any work of art, it needs to be something that does not reveal all its secrets at once. Something that keeps giving you, keep being intrigued and wanting to see more. It needs to set up its own logic and its own world. That might be quiet and sensitive, it might be brash and theatrical, or whatever. But it's a world that you find yourself drawn into repeatedly. So these are all very different, but they are all different worlds. I'd like to express gratitude to the Moran family and the Moran Foundation for this, and all their extraordinarily rare generosity and philanthropy for this prize, and all of the work they do for Australian art. Thank you. I'd also like to congratulate all the finalists, everyone who entered the prize and didn't get in. Don't be disheartened if you didn't get in. Yes, I've won lots of prizes, but I've also been rejected. That's how it goes, and it doesn't really matter. But this year, as I said, we had so many worthy contenders for the prize, we decided to choose a highly commended, which is something that doesn't always happen. And this year we would like to highly commend, it's the only one, highly commend Dagmar Sarula for her painting I Am Woman. Thank you, Dagmar.
I don't have a script because reading glasses and other glasses keep getting confused. So I've done some thinking. And by the way, Dagmar's painting is in the next room. It's big. It's a self-portrait nude, and it's a marvellous composition and a marvellous painting. Compositions are what turn paintings into art. And there are other things that make art good art, besides composition. First, I want to say a bit about Juniper Hall. I once lived in Juniper Hall in the 1960s and 70s when it was a slum apartment. It was half a dozen apartments with youngish curators running the art gallery of New South Wales. There was a director who thought he ran the art gallery, but we did. We knew what was going on. The first time that Juniper Hall was acquired by the Moran Arts Foundation and used for this exhibition was only 5 years ago. And I was one of the judges then with Ben Quilty. It's such fun to work with interesting artists like Ben Quilty and Wendy Sharp. They know a good brush stroke. They know which artist has broken up with which other artist. Who's been in jail lately, all that sort of thing. And we usually end up liking one or two things pretty equally. Whereas, besides brush strokes and personal knowledge, the museum curators, we look at paintings slightly differently. We think, not only is it good brushstrokes and good composition, is it an interesting thing that sets off thinking in an ordinary person off the street when they look at it, and will that same thing be happening in 100 years' time? And we sometimes succeed, I think, in selecting something that has those qualities. So, back to Juniper Hall. Now, after 5 years, with the Moran family constantly altering their systems, their management, which is creative, everything gets better over the 30 years or more of the foundation. But now, not only management of the exhibition here, the minds of the artists who are now entering are sort of aware, at last, that Juniper Hall is a house. It's not a big institutional museum like the galleries at the Mitchell Library, which is where the Moran Prize was often held in the past. Houses are different. Houses have humanity and life and ideas in them. So think about a house as a magic, mysterious place for portraits of people who might be interesting to be shown in. I think Juniper Hall has reached its perfection this year. So congratulations to the Moran Foundation for constantly changing and constantly making things perfect, whereas other places are inclined to fossilize. Now, some artists who paint portraits will insist that the subject is always, nevertheless, a self-portrait of the artist who painted that subject. So when somebody once in Adelaide asked me whether a photograph of me by the photographer Ian North was like Ian North instead of like me, well, I said to myself, well, I don't think I've ever looked quite as sly as that person in that photograph. And I knew that Ian North was a sly artist. Most artists are sly and should be, shouldn't they, Wendy?
Why not?
I've just discovered that the winner of this year's Moran Prize is, like me, a twin. Twins understand this issue of other persons having something of themselves in themselves. The title of this year's winner's painting is Luna Savant, which means something like clever man by moonlight, and the winner is Tim Storia. With Tim Storia. Please accept an official notification that he is the winner. Not quite.
It will be.
As good as.
I think nearly everything has been said, but I'd have to say thank you to the judges. It's always unexpected, and as Wendy points out, that one is very used to sort of not being hung or or being ignored. So my condolences really to all the other finalists, and in fact to all the artists. But it's worth noting that really, as an exercise, these type of things where you've got a room full of artists and one of them wins, it's effectively the best and quickest way to become unpopular. Because everybody hopes they win. And of course, the prize could have gone to any number of excellent pictures. So I'd like to thank the judges and also Mrs. Moran and the Moran Foundation for all the work that you do and have done for many years. It's also probably worth noting that that picture really should have been called Lazarus, because the judges at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, in their wisdom, threw him out. It did not make the cut. So it's kind of interesting, isn't it? It's two different institutions with two different value systems in a way. But that's a story for another day. Thank you again.
Well, thank you very much indeed to Wendy and Daniel, and of course, warmest congratulations to Tim Storia and to Dagmar Cirula. I will just say on behalf of the Moran Arts Foundation, thank you very much all for coming along this morning. Please do feel free to stay and have a look at the gallery. As I mentioned before, the exhibition opens to the public tomorrow and runs through until the 17th of December. And I mentioned again a little earlier about artist talks, and the first one of those will actually be given by Dagmar this Sunday, October the 22nd at 2 p.m, so that will be well worth coming along to. Now, any representatives of the media who would like to speak with our finalists and our winner and our highly commended, please do have a chat to one of the TM publicity team who will be very helpful and able to organise that for you. I should also mention just briefly that the presentation of the Moran Contemporary Photographic Prize will take place early in 2018, so we look forward to seeing you there. But now I'm sure there will be many desires to take various combinations of photos, so now is going to be the opportunity to do that. But thank you very much indeed to all of you for coming this morning. Thank you.